Hey everybody, welcome to lessonswithtroy.com. I'm Troy Brenningmeyer. Well, this is going to be volume 2 for my lesson all about arpeggios in open G tuning, GBD tuning from your thickest to your thinnest string for either dobro or lap steel, resonator guitar, whatever you're going to be playing here. As long as you're in GBD tuning, these arpeggios will work. Well, what differentiates volume 2 from volume 1? What are we learning new? Well, we're adding one note basically to the arpeggio, but it kind of gives you a lot of more options here. We're adding what's called the seventh to our arpeggio. So in volume 1, we worked with what's called triads. A triad is a 3-note chord. And I have my dobro right here. Now, the other thing that's different from volume 1 and volume 2 is in volume 1, we were in the key of G. But I tell you, I moved to the key of A because I wanted to show you what can happen behind the bar, like how some of these shapes look. So I didn't want to do it in the key of G because we'd have to be focused on the 12th fret. But in the key of A, we can focus on what's behind the bar as far as these arpeggio shapes go. So adding that seventh in there gives us a lot of different sounds, and that's what I've got written here. These are all variations of different A chords. So this neck would be arpeggio shapes over an A major seventh. This neck would be an A dominant seventh. This neck would be an A minor seventh. This neck would be an A diminished seventh. This neck would be an A augmented triad. And I'll kind of go over in just a little bit why I kind of picked some of these different arpeggios and how they're made up as far as the theory of them and how they sound and everything. But let me show you these diagrams first. The way I've got it broken up is, as you can tell here, we're going to focus on 3 strings at a time, right? Your strings. This one was strings 1, 2, and 3. And then we've got different shapes for strings 2, 3, and 4, strings 4, 3, and 5, and so on. And then in this diagram, I have, just in case you wanted to make your own arpeggio shapes, I've got them on all the strings. Now notice how the color coding works. Basically, this the different colors makes it a little bit easier for you to see these different arpeggio shapes. Let's go back to this one and notice how the different colors kind of, I don't know, to me it kind of jumps out, that arpeggio does. Now, why would you want to add that seventh in there? What does that do to the sound, and why is this useful? I guess I need to sell that to you, right? Well, the seventh can make things sound a lot different than just playing a regular triad. For example, if we're going to play, let's say, an A major triad, we've got, right? That would just be root, third, fifth of that A. Now, if we put that seventh in there, so it adds a little bit different sound. That would be what I just played there was an A. Let me turn off this reverb here just a second. And off we go. Hearing my voice reverbified or whatever it's called. Okay, so what I played there was an A major seventh, right? Now what I did immediately is I started combining these different arpeggio shapes, right? And that adds a bit of usefulness to this already. I just played 7 root, 3, 5, 7 root, right? And that's a cool thing to do once you start getting these shapes down, is just start combining them all over the neck. Now I have made jam tracks. What you heard in the sample there was me playing with a jam track that I made with Band in a Box over what I wrote out in tablature, an exercise where you're playing the different arpeggios in the key of A going up the neck. So that's a great exercise to work on. It really gets that key down. So what you want to do is you want to be able to move these not only just over, playing over A chords, that doesn't have much of a use, right? But you want to be able to know where your notes are on the neck, first of all, and then match that root note up to match whatever arpeggio you want to play over whatever chord you want to play, whether it's a major seventh, dominant seventh, minor seventh, diminished seventh, augmented seventh. Well, that being said, let me show you what these arpeggios sound like. Let's take this major seventh, what I just played. Right? So we got that seventh right next to the root, right? And that has a jazzy sound, kind of a sophisticated sound, not real bluesy or country or anything. Now let's go ahead and move down to the dominant seventh. Now this one I think a lot of you guys will like, because that flatted seventh, that gives you that bluesy sound. Now immediately I want to start playing, combining these different shapes with this. So like, let's say I played this arpeggio and then ended up somewhere around this arpeggio shape, right? So the first one is flat 7, root 3, 5, flat 7, root. Just played that. Flat 7, root 3, 5, flat 7, root. Okay. Then what you can do is I played root, flat 7, fifth, 3. Now immediately what I'm going to start doing when I'm playing the blues is kind of get into this minor seventh, kind of start combining the minor seventh arpeggio with that dominant seventh arpeggio, because what that gives you is that flatted third makes up a minor seventh, right? So if I haven't said so already, a dominant seventh is root, regular, major third, major fifth, and then a flat seventh. So basically 2 frets behind your root. Now a minor seventh gets even more bluesy with that flat seventh, root, flat third, fifth, right? Because in the blues, that third is kind of ambiguous, right? So you can start combining that flat third with your major third, and then ending on the root is a real cool sound. Like let's say we're right here, 5, flat 3, move it up to regular 3, and then root, flat 7. Now let's focus on this minor seventh. Now I've said a million times this X shape, right? You hear me talk about it. It's a great movable minor pentatonic scale, right? That forms an X shape. Well, if we just add one note, this first fret, open, but on the first string, right? That D note, basically right there. Picture a red dot being right there. So 5, and there, flat 3, root, flat 7. If we played that, and back on the root, that forms that X shape that I always talk about of that minor pentatonic scale. And you can do that. That would be, what are you adding there? The 4th of your scale right there. So anywhere you kind of want to add that, basically 2 frets behind your 5th, let's say, to this minor 7th. That sounds real cool. So we're automatically finding a use with the blues, which I always think is a great way to look at anything you play, whether it's scales or arpeggios, because you immediately kind of get away from classical theory and stuff that can be a little, you don't know how to use it so much. And once you can apply it to the blues, seems like, especially with our instrument here, it's a very bluesy instrument, it starts to make a little bit more sense. Okay, let's go ahead and move down to this diminished 7th. And why did I choose diminished 7th? Well, first of all, I think it's really cool sounding. Okay, but the other cool thing is look at the shapes here. I really want to focus on these arpeggio lessons on getting your mind to think of shapes. Check out how these are all the same shape, right? The red, the green, the blue, the pink, those are all the same shape. Now look, let's kind of analyze this if we can. That's a root, a flat 3, a flat 5. Okay, so that differentiates that already from all of our other arpeggios. And then we've got a doubly flatted seventh there. Now, what's a double flatted seventh? Basically, if this, let's go up to the major seventh. Here's root 7, or major seventh, right? You flat it once, it's a flat 7, works great over blues, that dominant 7th chord, right? Major 3rd. Okay, and then we come down to the minor 7th. We still have that flatted 7th, but now we flat our 3rd. Now with this diminished 7th, we move it back another fret. So here's major 7th, here's flatted 7th, here's a doubly flatted 7th. And that's what makes a diminished 7th. Now notice how these are all the same shapes, but they move up what's called a minor 3rd, which is 3 frets. Just think, move this whole shape up 3 frets at a time. And that gives you that sound of that diminished 7th sound. Oh. Focus on what I'm doing. Then we got 4, fret 7, fret 10. So first fret. So that has a really cool sound. You can also, with some of these, and I don't know if I mentioned this in the first lesson or not, you know, anything you want to play, whether it's individual notes or double stops, right? Take, let's say just the strings 1 and string 2. You know, and then come up here for that 5th and 7th of our chord. And then, so yeah, so you can take any of these arpeggios and play any double stops out of them you want, play any individual notes you want. Start combining the arpeggio shapes, and then say this diminished is really cool because you don't have to worry about slants. You can just grab strings 1 and 2, move them up 3 frets at a time. 1st fret, 4th fret, 7th fret, 10th fret. I just played double stops on strings 1 and 2 there, and it sounds great. Now let's go down to the augmented triad. Now, why did I pick a triad when this lesson's all about 7ths? Well, I wanted to show you, because I didn't talk about it in the first lesson, how the augmented also has shapes, kind of like the diminished 7th, right? But instead of it moving what's called a minor 3rd, it moves actually 4 frets up instead of 3 frets. So these are all the same shape, right? It gives you what's called inversions of that chord, where that's root 3 sharp 5. That's what an augmented is, not a regular 5th, but you sharp that 5. Move this whole shape up 4 frets, and this 3rd drops down to your lowest note, and then sharp 5, and then root. Move this whole shape up 4 frets. Now your sharp 5 moves down to your lowest note, and then root and 3rd. So that's really cool. You know, I really highly suggest for you to think about that, and a lot of musicians do, how these shapes look and how diminished moves up, you know, minor 3rd or 3 frets. Augmented moves up 4 frets. A good thing.